nine, eight, seven, six, five, four, three, two, one.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Aeryn Cagle. I'm an investment associate at the Newchip Accelerator. I've been working here for the past few months and have been absolutely moved by Newchip's mission and their values. Newchip is driven by a passion for enhancing the entrepreneurial community and wants nothing more than to see great ideas brought to life. The Newchip believes in their founders, but even more than that, they believe in diversity. They want to see those great ideas brought to life by people with different backgrounds, of different ethnicities, and of different genders, which is definitely reflected in the fact that we have absolutely innovative and exceptionally driven women starting as founders in our cohorts every month. So to reflect on that and to highlight that a little bit during our demo day, we wanted to do a panel discussing a little bit more about what exactly it means to be a woman in the entrepreneurial community. So I've invited CEOs of 3 Newchip companies here today to talk a little bit about their journeys of being successful entrepreneurs and how they want that success to be a catalyst of change for the next generation. So ladies, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and to talk to me today. I really appreciate it. I'd like to start by giving each of you a moment to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about your businesses to share your passion with people watching today.
Great. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Alicia Driskill. I'm the founder and CEO of EvolveHer. We are a personal and professional development hub for women. We have a community of women from a wide range of industries that come together, and we provide different resources and really focusing on providing a lot of value from knowledge exchange, curating resources that help you advance in your career, but also support you in life, because there's no line of divide in between those anymore. And so it's really, how do we make it all work together and leverage each other's strengths and knowledge to allow us to go further faster. We started as a creative workspace and had a space that hosted around 350 events a year. We're about 3 years old. And with COVID, we've moved into the virtual events, virtual community, and we'll be launching our resource hub later this month, or next month, which we're really excited about. And I am very thrilled to be here with these amazing panel and appreciate Newchip having me.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you being here for sure. Cecilia,
I guess, yeah, it's my turn. Hello, everyone, and as well, thank you very much for having me. My name is Cecilia, and I am the CEO of Exeboard. We are based, and I was born and raised in Guatemala City. And Exeboard is a board portal software, so it's software designed for boards of directors specifically to increase their engagement, their communication, to make it easier to share documents ahead of time and really allow board members to be prepared before meetings to engage actively in those meetings and really drive the company's strategy forward, as well as governance and other issues that the board deals with. I am a partner at Nahual Ventures, which is a small incubator that we have here in Guatemala City, and recently took on the role of CEO of Exeboard. So I really fell in love with our startup, our team, and just recently took on the role of CEO. And I work hand in hand with my co-founding partners to really grow this company from what is right now relatively small. We're selling only in Guatemala, and we're looking to expand it to other countries and other markets through Newchip and in other strategies as well.
fantastic.
Hi everybody. I'm proud to be here on a great panel of great people and with a great accelerator, Newchip. So let me just give you a quick on OBSESH, and I'm CEO and co-founder, and I'm happy to say we are a woman-powered company. I have a female co-founder, Jonalyn Morris. And OBSESH is a online marketplace solving income for athletes. And so most people don't know, outside of the big four sports, the league sports where you make an income, more than 200 million professional outdoor sports and athletes struggle to make an income, which is kind of ironic to what we're here doing today, which is talking about being an entrepreneur. And so we are looking to make that easier for them so they can focus on what they do, which is entertain the world, inspire the world, and help people live their ambitions and their dreams.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about your businesses. Let's talk a little bit about your journeys. Let's look at the past. So Alicia, prior to launching EvolveHer, you had a very successful career for 17 years in the entertainment and media industry, working alongside that industry's most elite. So I was wondering how you decided to kind of take the leap and make that jump to a public career by launching EvolveHer.
Yeah, it was definitely a journey. I loved my corporate career, and I worked for 17 years in media marketing. I mean, great companies like People and Live Nation. And I really loved what I did, but I'd always been kind of searching for something that was tied into purpose and some kind of impact work, but I didn't really know, how to incorporate that and also what that would be. And so as I continued into my career and I started at a company, WME had acquired IMG, so a talent agency, bought an event company. And so I was vice president of global partnerships. And so I sat over both of, I had access to those two different companies and basically could pull in all kinds of different products and events and talent and all of that and come up with brand solutions. And while I was doing that, I met a woman by the name of Jennifer Rudolph Walsh, and she headed up the literary department and then also women's tours and events. And when I was there, I would like side hustle on her stuff because I was so passionate about it and it was driving impact. And I could see how she was leading her team with like a different leadership style that I'd seen before. And it really resonated with me. And I felt like that really gave me a broader picture and a broader scope of what you could do and how you could incorporate that on multiple levels. And so I decided that I wanted to really, step away from corporate and to focus on dedicating that next chapter of my career to supporting women, advancing women, figuring out how we can, keep people in the workforce or give them the tools that they need. And as I was doing that and doing some consulting work, I felt like I would go to all these events and meet all these amazing people. And then I'd come home and it's like me, my dog, picking up my kids, all those things. And you just lose that energy that you get when you're around people. And so I decided to open a creative workspace for women. And I went to my husband. I was like, I'm going to take all of our savings. Are you cool with this? Let's give it to the women of Chicago. And luckily he was supportive, and I self-funded it. We opened it up, and at first it was just me. And I quickly realized that we needed a lot more than myself to run a space that was hosting a ton of events. And it really validated the need in the marketplace for it. And it was such an amazing first few months. And then as we grew, we met so many just really, really unique women who were across so many different fields. I mean, we hosted political events and everything. So really any female forward event in Chicago would come through this space. And so I felt like I got to the point when in the decision making where there wasn't an option for me not to do it. And so I just took the leap and haven't looked back. And I honestly love it so much.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I love that story because, taking that leap can be kind of scary, but I think when you're that passionate about something where you're like, there is no other choice, I have to do this. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So Cecilia, you graduated from Stanford with an engineering degree, right? And then you wanted to, kind of similarly to what Alicia said, you wanted to kind of look at the balance between impact and business. You have a lot of experience in the social impact industry. You did corporate social responsibility, and you started your own small venture in Guatemala. Following that, you then got an MBA from Haas School of Business, where you wanted to nurture your love of entrepreneurship. You started a fintech club there, right? And did several other entrepreneurial programs. So kind of looking at your background, my first thought was, it looks like you have always had a passion for entrepreneurship. So I was wondering if you could share with us a little bit about when you first discovered entrepreneurship and kind of how you fell in love with it.
Okay, I guess when did I guess I first discovered it when I was really little. I mean, I think a lot of kids do this, but, you start selling random little things to get like some extra money. We would bake brownies and things like that. But really, I think my first real experience or more tangible experience was that social venture I co-founded kind of right out of Stanford back here in Guatemala. And we were working with women in very, very remote areas of Guatemala and trying to do almost like micro businesses for them. So give them access to certain products that they could sell in their communities and empower them in the sales process, give them materials, and then kind of involve them in our distribution channels that we already had set up from a bigger company. So we were kind of leveraging the resources of that retail company and seeing how can we bring in women, and in particular women in very remote areas, into kind of our supply chain in a way. And it was extremely hard because we were working with extremely poor communities and trying to create a market where there was very, very limited resources. And we were trying to find products that would make sense in those markets. Ultimately, it didn't grow as much as we wanted it to. And again, I think it was just the market. There was really no market in those communities. There are more communities that needed something a bit more aid-like, I think. But that was my first experience, and I really loved it. I mean, I much like Alicia said, I was spending kind of way more time than I should be on that as opposed to my other job. And it really piqued my interest. So it was natural for me when I went to business school to want to be involved in a lot of these clubs. And luckily I was, fortunate enough to be back in the Bay with amazing teachers and access to entrepreneurs and programs like Lean Launchpad, where you can kind of create your own business while being at business school and really test out the water. So it came really natural to me. And I think I hate being bored. And I think that's a big part of it. I think that being an entrepreneur is, there's a new challenge every day, and no day is the same as the day before. And I think that lack of routine is something I thrive in. So, yeah.
It's fantastic. So Tracy, you are the CEO of OBSESH. You're a digital fan-centric platform fueling outdoor sports, passion, and personal wellness. I love your business. I love the model, all of it. But before that, you have 20 years of experience in consumer tech and consumer media. So you were a chief marketing and product officer by Kraft for a lot of high growth brands, including Home Depot, Best Buy, Monster. How did you kind of make that jump and that decision? Are there any specific mentors that you can cite that inspired you to help you make that leap? And maybe anybody that has helped you stay accountable in the pursuit of that dream?
Yeah, well, that's a big question, because I feel like I get inspired by people from every angle, whether it's, Maya Angelou, who equally as us is scared to put out her, the next writing, or Kate Winslet, who is always, challenging fear before her next performance. I've always been inspired by people that are underserved and basically break through barriers, because I feel like I've always been driven by the power of relationships, my passion and purpose, which, it's hard to be an entrepreneur, a sustainable entrepreneur, if you're not driven by some kind of purpose. And so I've had many, what I would say, like, very close community relationships, family relationships, but just, women in afar that I am inspired by. It starts, I think, with my family. My grandmother was one of those badass women that would just blaze trails. Still today, she's 95. And she always used to say to me, you can do that later. Today, you need to solve the world. Go do it, And she just never had the fear. And this is, a woman that grew up she was a child in the 1920s, went through depression. She went through many pandemics, if you will, polio, everything to today, right? This is probably the only pandemic she's not fully aware of. But, it's just like, I have always blazed trails. I don't blaze trails for the sake of blazing trails. I blaze trails en route to solving problems for people. It's just always been in my nature. I grew up as an athlete. We're always striving for what's ahead of us. We're not trying to be where we were. And so those relationships and those inspirations literally come every day. Like I can sit here and say without a doubt, I'm inspired by Cecilia and Alicia for doing what they're doing. And listen, as entrepreneurs, you know, our fear never outgrows a success because we're never as successful as we want to be, because success is about our purpose and where we're trying to go. And so I've got lots of inspirations, and I love just surrounding myself with the people that can continue to inspire me, because having grown up in a corporate environment, having built large teams, but I was always the entrepreneur in the big company. I was the one that was blazing the trail and creating and building markets and building brands, you know, whether it was like GoPro or Beats or the 85 different startups trying to come into Best Buy. That's what I love to do, is build. I come from a family of Swedes. We're craftsmen and builders and doers with the right to roam. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will definitely say all three of you inspire me as well. And I definitely think it's a wonderful point to, you know, surround yourself with people who inspire you to bring you up. Listening to all of your answers to those questions, I definitely heard a lot of successful characteristics come out, you know, being fearless in the pursuit of what you want to do, and being mission driven and that kind of thing. So let me ask each of you, what do you think, if you had to pick one, is the number one most important characteristic to have to succeed as an entrepreneur?
I'll take that. I think it's time management. I think as women in particular, we often, you know, balance careers, family, friends. We're more relational typically than, you know, I mean, we have more empathy, we have more relationships, we value those things a little differently. And sometimes I would say it's a battle every day, because it's how we're wired. It's not necessarily what we choose, it's how we're wired. And, you know, the most important aspect of being an entrepreneur, and I always go back to athletes, it's like when you can manage your time, you can read 1 million books on, you know, this person's got 15 ways to success. If you can manage your time, and managing your time is knowing when to say yes, knowing what you're aiming for. I like to refer to it as a goat in a paper mill, okay? A goat's gonna go into a paper mill, if you can visualize this, and they're just gonna chew all day long. They're like, this is amazing. And we as women, we can do that, right? Because we're just wired that way. We always have been. And so that goat's going through the paper mill, chewing up a bunch of paper, but at the end of the day, there's no milk coming out of the goat. Now listen, I grew up a Chicago city kid, so there's nothing about me that's a farmer, but lots of them in the family. But you're coming out with no milk. And at the end of the day, you're like, well, God, did I chew up a lot of time? Did I chew up a lot of paper? What did I actually do that moved me to producing the thing I want? And so I see so many people that don't focus on, you know, can you walk through that paper mill and not chew up the paper? And can you just go right for what you need? Because that time is the one finite resource. Doesn't matter how much wealth, success, things you buy, things you do, time is the one finite resource that we all, everybody in the world, your customer, your family, you as an entrepreneur, your partner's business, it's the one resource nobody can buy more of. And so that's the thing we have to manage the best. And I've learned over the years, although I have the capacity to chew a lot of paper in that mill, I have to stay focused on the thing that's going to move today, this week, this goal, for my customer, for whatever it is. And so time management is my one thing.
I love that answer. I'm definitely not going to forget about the goat chewing up paper. I'm going to think about that all day.
And just to be fair, I was not a farmer, but I've seen a lot of goats So
I love it. It's very memorable. Alicia, Cecilia, do you have any thoughts on what the most important characteristic would be to be as successful as an entrepreneur?
I
Yeah.
was going to say something similar. I was going to say delegating, like learning how to delegate, I think is something that I've had to learn. It's kind of hard to not want to control over everything. But I think that in a parallel to time management, there's absolutely no way you can actually do everything. And this goes not just for your business, but also in life and all the other things that we need to worry about. And so I think that being able to delegate effectively, and what I mean by that is not just knowing what to delegate and what not to delegate, but also being there enough for whoever you delegate to, that they know that they can come to you and ask for feedback or support or whatever, and still being aware of what they're doing, but giving them enough freedom and trust and empowerment that they can actually run with that. And then you can focus on what really matters at that moment, be it fundraising, be it reaching out to new customers, whatever it is. I think that being an effective delegator, which I'm still working on, I must say, is probably one of the most important characteristics as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you guys. I mean, the time management thing is such a skill to be able to learn that, especially when you have, outside commitments or family or school or, all of these other different areas, and really being able to figure out a schedule that works, or to compartmentalize things as well. And so then you can focus and be super efficient. And one of the things, I just want to touch on that, and then I've got another one as well. But with the time management piece, what really helped me was this idea of a pendulum of, my family and then work, and you want to hover in the middle, but sometimes you're going to be more on one side. And when you do, you just give a little extra here. And so if you can look at it like in a month instead of a day, then it takes that pressure off, because we put so much pressure on ourselves as women of we have to do it all. But if you just, are able to ebb and flow with it a little bit, it really helped me. I would say my one thing that is actually, it's just crucial for entrepreneurs is to let go of perfectionism and to just put it out there, right? Because we get so caught up sometimes in everything has to be perfect. It has to be completely done. I'm not going to push any of it out until it looks exactly, it's representing me, it's representing my brand, and all of these things. And especially, I came from corporate where I had a team, I had resources, I had all of these things to help support me. And then it's me, doing website development and all of these things that I had the skills that I could do, but I don't have the time. And to Cecilia's point, we can't do it all. And so in the beginning, when I was opening EvolveHer, I built out this coral logo. It looked completely different, but it took me a lot to be able to just be okay with it. I just want to be the first one out there in the market, start, building relationships, getting partnerships on board, talking to women's organizations. And if I wouldn't have been okay with putting myself out there and allow myself to evolve or to grow as, we go along, then I would have been stuck and I would have missed the opportunity. So I think that is such a really important characteristic to really learn and to work on over time. And I mean, as you continue to grow and it continues to circle back in your life, but if you can let go of that piece, and I always joke that I'm like a recovering perfectionist. And so it allows me to, put it out there, and you learn so much from people's feedback and those conversations that you have. And that's so valuable. And that's going to give you more input than any research study you could do on your own, any, development that you're doing, those actual conversations with customers, with investors, with leaders, because that's going to craft your product.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's great. I love how your answers kind of tied together. And I definitely agree with that, because I'm definitely a recovering perfectionist, struggle with that often. But yeah, now that we've talked a little bit about the past, a little bit about kind of your journeys leading up to this point, let's touch on the present. So Alicia, I know that a big part of EvolveHer when it was getting started was based on kind of an in-person community building component. And we did briefly touch on this earlier, but obviously you guys had to shift your business model a lot. Can you tell me a little bit about how that went? I mean, how you stayed committed to pursuing your mission despite that obstacle?
Yeah, I'm going to be fully transparent with you. It was really hard. Like, this is a tough time for everyone. And for you to have a physical space, I just hired 3 more people. We trained them. We were getting ready for a busy season. We were going out for fundraising. We were going to start a crowdfunding campaign. And literally, like, the day all of that was going to launch was when they shut down the city for COVID. And so to go from all of those events that are scheduled, that are paid for, to 0, and potentially for months and that kind of thing, because at the time we had no idea the scope of it or how long it would be, was really scary. And, trying to navigate the PPP and the EIDL, and do I keep, my staff on board? And, we'd always planned to move into the digital space and have a digital marketplace that brought together resources, tools, and connections for women, and where you could go in and you could really fill out an intake form, get all this information, and then you get all this customized for your needs. And so that was our long-term, strategy that we were going out for funding for, but that was 2 years down the line. So that would have allowed us to move from B2C to B2B and, physical to digital in a very strategic manner. But what I did is kind of took a step back and just took everything in, because what I didn't want to do was just react and put out more clutter and, spend time and energy and resources on something that's not aligned with our mission, but also isn't helping anybody. And so after a couple weeks, we started helping sort through some of the events, some of the resources, some of all these things. Like, as a parent, I was just getting inundated with all these great resources for my kids for e-learning, but I didn't have time to go through 50 emails. So we would kind of sort those for the different users and members, so then they could go in and find exactly what they needed. And we moved our physical community and membership to online. And then the resource hub, I was able to actually work with a development team that is very familiar. Like, our website's on HubSpot right now, and so it connects like our marketing and CRM and everything together. But we were able to build out some of the resource tools on there, so it's going to serve as the MVP versus spending the initial money up front or waiting for funding to come in. So we were able to find some workarounds that have really helped us and allowed us to kind of keep that moving. But I mean, honestly, there are times, and I'm sure you guys felt the same way, where it's, you're questioning, can you make it through? There's so many different things. How do you build out a strategy and scenario plan for 4 different scenarios? And so had a lot of conversations with different business owners. We got accepted into the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program. And so we had some conversations with them. We start the full program on Monday. We're really excited about that too. And so just really tapping into our resources and getting some higher level input as well. I talked to Newchip advisors, talked to some of my personal mentors. And then we decided to put together a short-term plan, and then, build out some of these components, and then build out the models that are associated with the community, and changing our roadmap really based off of where we had those conversations and where the direction of need netted out. And so it's been really exciting. And with the resource hub, we're finally at a place where we're ready to launch it. And we have an event coming up called Scene that's really focused on amplifying the voices of Black women. And we're connecting all these amazing thought leaders and speakers with allies and advocates and people who are dedicated to make an impact. And it's a month-long event and content series that's launching in October. And so we've been able to bring some of our old clients on board and corporate sponsors. So it's really starting to all come together around the launch time. And so I think just that constant communication with people and keeping a pulse, understanding what's out there, what are the needs of our members, the community, corporations, because it literally changed overnight. And I can make assumptions, as well as anybody, but it's, again, like, how do we really understand it and then keep that pulse as it continues to change? Because it's not going to be the same in 6 months or a year, but at least if we can identify those core pieces that will stay the same, then we're not going to risk our business falling off, as it kind of ebbs and flow, because we have that stable line, and then we can build on top of that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I wanted to ask you that question because I love how mission driven that you are. You know, you didn't change the goal or the impact that you wanted to have. You just changed how you were going to get there. And I think that's great. So Tracy, I know a lot is happening for OBSESH right now. You guys are really ramping up and have a lot of big things in the work. So I was hoping that you could summarize that a little bit for me, just where you guys are at and where you guys are going. And then maybe tell me a little bit about what motivates you every day to keep working on stuff, even through difficult times.
Yeah, so I am pretty excited about where we're at. And just, you know, to sort of level set, the problem we're attacking is this giant pool of professional athletes, whether they're sports celebrities or high, you know, profile personalities. These are people that are amazing at their craft and they've built their careers. Nobody becomes, you know, at the top of the charts overnight. And so most often this goes on for decades, you know, to get to this elite level. And what we're solving is they themselves, just like us here, are entrepreneurs. They have to make an income. They've already got a full-time job, right? And so what motivates me is I was in that scenario many years. And like many athletes today, that model of how they get paid has not changed, honestly, since the 1700s. No joke. The late 1700s was the first brand endorsement. It has stayed the same for, you know, hundreds of years. And it's harder and harder. And so what drives me every day is understanding that athletes get to a time where they have to make a decision. Can they afford to be an athlete because they're not making income? They're trying to be an entrepreneur, which is not their skill sets. We look at some of the icons like Serena Williams, who's had a great team to help her mindset to become an entrepreneur, but she's always been a tennis player. And so that drives me every single day. And so the success that we're seeing from that is, you know, we saw the big missing gap, which is athletes need a source of income. They can't go out and get a full-time job. They don't know how to market themselves. They don't have the time. Talk about time management. They need to put their time to their craft, not having another full-time job, finding brands, finding and securing endorsements. And so, you know, as we think about that time as a precious resource, what's happened is we started getting all this success. We've got now 65 pro athletes that have signed up with OBSESH. We have a wait list of about 120 right now because athletes have the problem. They all have it. And we started down the path of launching our app, which our model is a marketplace where athletes can sell their time, talent, and skills to fans. They don't need the brand. So a la Cameo does for birthday messages and gifting messages, or OnlyFans, you know. Bella Thorne, I think, just sold $1 million worth of her, you know, stardom, her personal brand in 24 hours. These athletes have time, talent, and skills. And so we're giving them a marketplace where they can they don't have to be the world's best marketer. They can sell original video experiences, whether it's personalized messages, remote classes and experiences, training, teaching, helping fans engage and learn. So every day I'm motivated, no kidding, by the endless athletes that are pinging me like, hurry, hurry, hurry. So we've been doing it manually in this marketplace mode because we wanted to get our product right, make sure 100% of all athletes, whether you're an adaptive athlete, you're a track and field runner, you're an Olympic swimmer, or you're, you know, professional parkour or cliff jumper or kayaker, you can have success on our platform selling at least one product, personalized video, expertise, and messages. So we've been working on that. What COVID did was it accelerated the amount of athletes ready to sell because they've got these huge fan bases. They have very little time. They're still training. They're still trying to achieve their goals, which is greatness in the world. And the brand endorsements, which were the little thing they could count on, sometimes, you know, for $5,000 a month, sometimes for $50 a month, all those went chop, right? Because I know as a CMO, recovering CMO, you're always 5 minutes away from a budget cut. And it's not because brands want to, it's because that's the reality of running a business. And so what we did was we had to accelerate, not launch our app, but get a web marketplace solution that we can not only do one product, which was our first focus out the gate, we can do two products, these online remote experiences. So not too distant from what Alicia's talking about, athletes like to do things in person. So we were going out to market with in real life experiences, and the athletes are like, oh, no. I make a living by my lungs. I make a living by my health. I am down with doing online experiences because my fans every day are like, how'd you do that? Can you give me that tip? Can you give me that trick? Can you teach me, please? Because I don't want to like weed through the weeds. So we accelerated, and now we have this wonderful, it's a story, but it's a pressure I feel every single day. We have demand, and I'm trying to force the product into a way that every athlete right now in this scenario can be successful. And so we made some pivots, we've made some adjustments, but I've never built a product that went from A to Z as I planned. And so what I love is like Alicia and Cecilia and myself, we're not so set in stone in our products that we can't adjust. And if we can survive a pandemic like this, I'm telling you, everything else is going to look quite easy. And I believe the world is actually growing new muscles and doing new skills that should have been happening a long time ago, but we were resistant to go there, right? Because as humans, we want to have events where we're together. We want to have Coachella. We want to have the X Games, you know, we want to do all that. But how cool that now we get to expand our business to a broader base. We get to still try and figure out how we make those human connections. And those things I don't think will change through any pandemic because we're people. So I'm excited where we're going. And, you know, 30 messages a day about can you go faster from an athlete is enough pressure, because our mission is to help them get paid for their time, talent, and skills in a way they don't have to become the entrepreneur. They can't sit here like me and spend their days, and that's what has had to happen. So they just don't do it. They focus on that and they don't make any money. So that's what drives me.
Have you seen, curious, just have you seen a lot of growth also in the number of fans that reach out to you all and that want to join the platform?
Yeah, well, so that's a great question for us right now. Our fans, we're really focused in this first, couple years on solving for the pro athlete, because the pro athlete every day, probably not unlike what you might do, Cecilia, in a day, is you wake up, you go onto your Instagram, you go follow your favorite people. Mm-hmm. It's like good old retail. If you go show up to your favorite store and they're not there, you're like, okay, I'm bummed. And so our athletes, our sports celebs, they have the fans. We've been testing with them through their fans. And their fans, of course, have always been doing these behaviors of tapping them, DMing them 100 times a week. But today they can't monetize that. And in the land of time is your only finite resource. There's no better pinnacle of time management for an athlete. They know exactly what they have to spend their time on. And that's why, unfortunately, they don't answer a lot of that. But if they knew they could make income, that's where the fans during this time are really tapping them even more, because they want that human connection. But now they want to know, like, how do I learn how to do that hang 10 on a board, a long board, like from what I have at my house? I have a board, I could stand on the board. And so we're not yet focused on the fans, because the athletes, they know what their fans want. And so if we feed them, we trust they know their fans.
Awesome. So, Cecilia, I'm curious, just do you have anything to add on to that of how the pandemic has affected your business or your life and how you're dealing with those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, business-wise, well, the first thing is we had just leased a new office, literally when the pandemic started, for like a year-long contract. And then suddenly we're all working remotely. So that was unexpected, of course. And it's something that we've dealt with. We kind of moved everything mid-pandemic, and I've been trying to figure out a way to get creative around that space right now that is being frankly underutilized. But honestly, like business-wise, our software is almost, can almost benefit from this pandemic because it's made forcefully everyone go remote, including board members, who are oftentimes very accustomed to being in the room, right? And so tools like ours are actually very helpful, and we've even seen an increase in their use from all of our clients. So a really huge uptick in the amount of time they're spending running live meetings on our software. So in a way, our tool has become a bit more essential in this time. However, obviously companies' budgets are somewhat strapped, so it's still a tough sell sometimes. And so I think work-wise, that pandemic isn't as hurtful to our business. I'd say the biggest thing for me personally with the pandemic is the whole work from home and juggling. I think what we've talked about before around just the work-life balance, and then juggling, household things and a toddler, and we're moving this week. And so all those are the things that can pile on, and that they can seem a bit more overwhelming in a pandemic when you have less access to things like childcare or extracurricular activities or other things that, could help you balance that out. But luckily for us, business-wise, I mean, I wouldn't say the pandemic is great for us because, again, we're, all working remotely, and resources are still a little bit strapped. But it does serve to validate our product. And we've become much more of an essential tool for our current clients. So it's also helping us in our retention rates and kind of our word of mouth marketing in a way. So that's been great for us, even though obviously I would love for the pandemic to end.
I thought it was really interesting that, the characteristics that you guys chose, time management, delegating, learning how to not be a perfectionist. I think it was Alicia that I was talking to about this at one time, of how, everyone struggles with work-life balance, but specific characteristics that being a mom can actually give you that can help you uniquely succeed as an entrepreneur. I mean, I think it definitely gives you all of those things. I know, Cecilia, you have a toddler, and then Alicia, you have two kids, 7 and 9, right?
Yeah.
So would you guys agree that they definitely help you with a unique skill set?
Yes, I definitely, and you keep developing new skills along the way. Like, I feel like this pandemic and e-learning, and, there were definitely times in the spring where I was on a video call or speaking, and like my 7-year-old laying on the ground, like, I don't want to do my work. And I'm like, if you speak. And so it's like figuring out, how you can communicate differently, or to incentivize, or to set boundaries. And I think one of the biggest challenges was that, before, when we were at work, we would come home. That was our time with the family. We were always accessible, and then the weekends. And so all of a sudden we were put in this position where we're always home, and our kids are like, score, we get to spend more time with the family. And so just figuring out how to navigate some of that stuff. But I definitely think, as I got older and, have a family, and, all these other factors start to play into life, for me, it was really looking at what's important and what's not. And I think that's a really important skill, whether it's like you were talking about, I think it was Tracy was talking about this earlier, or maybe it was Cecilia, when you're like looking at delegating, or when you're looking at, your time management, or a situation like the pandemic where you're going to have to cut costs and like really go to bare minimum because you don't know what the future looks like. And so it allows you to look at, everything. I'm a visionary, so I love a whole lot of ideas and all the, future potential, But at the same time, we really need to be able to focus on how we can move things forward. And so with the kids, I know I have a finite time, and then I'm going to spend that with them, and they're super important to me. So I want to make sure I'm present and, can always work later. But I focus on what I need to focus on to get done, so that I am not holding up my team. I'm not holding up communication with other people. And so that was really important to me. And then I think, the flexibility of looking at your schedule different. And I feel like the pandemic kind of forced everyone into this situation where I've never really been limited by the 9 to 5 hours. And I've always been, I grind on the night. If I'm in a groove, like I will stay up and I'll work till 2 o'clock, but I don't expect my team to respond obviously at that time, but if I have the time to do it. And so, I would leave at corporations. I'd leave and go to my kids', musicals, but then I would also stay up late and to work. And so by looking at it as I'm going to get the work done, I'm going to go above and beyond, but again, taking that pressure off myself, and allowing us as parents or as workers with other commitments to be able to just do it a little bit differently than traditional, because with the phones, we're always attached. So you've got to look at it anyway, I think.
Absolutely. Let me ask you another question, Alicia. So we talked a little bit about the current state of everyone's businesses and the impact of the pandemic. So let's talk about the future instead. So I know that besides running EvolveHer, you also do a lot of work with nonprofit organizations, a lot of which focus on the next generation of young women learning how to be leaders. Can you tell me a little bit, future-wise, where you want that impact to lead? What are your hopes participating with those nonprofits what impact do you want the next generation to have from them?
Yeah, I think there's probably 2 areas that are just so close to my heart. And one is that I think the peak of confidence for girls is at 9 years old. And so we not only get in our head and we're just wired that certain way to have these limiting beliefs, but then you have, technology that's playing into it. You have, like, back in the day, it was like we had TV and magazines and all that, but there's so many more things now. So I want to be able to, have some of these conversations now to really drill these skills and these, the confidence and all of these things in at such a younger age, because what would happen if you learned at 9 years old to trust your gut, right? So instead of, if I have an argument with my husband or something like that, instead of me being like, oh, Stella, we're fine, we didn't argue, and she can see it, she feels it, she knows that there was some kind of disagreement, versus me saying, you know what, adults disagree, and it's important to talk about it, and then we're fine afterwards. So it validates that gut. So then when she's faced with all these choices in life, she's learned that she should trust her gut instinct, right? And so to teach, like, imposter syndrome, like all of these things, so that later on they have the confidence to stand up and to say, this is not acceptable. Because there's so many things through my life, and I'm sure you guys as well, where people have spoke to you incorrectly, or you've been treated bad, or those kinds of things, and you just kind of let it happen. And now, we definitely have moved forward in some areas and have a lot we could go in a lot of other areas. But I think that it's just really important to get those skills as a baseline and foundation, and then to let them realize, the skills that they have and how they can apply it. So like with the EvolveHer Future program that we do, it's really focused on looking at, do you love art? Do you love this? How do you take that skill and apply it to impact in the community, to a job? How do you make a business out of it? And so looking at your strengths at such a young age and seeing, like, you actually could build a business, or you actually can impact your local community, and how to use that. The other side of it is giving visibility and just really addressing, like, the social injustice and all of these issues that we're facing as a country. And I think that at such a young age, and we have such an opportunity with this younger generation with Gen Z, because they come in and they have full visibility into everything. And I think to show this generation that, as parents, as leaders of companies, that we are not going to let these things happen to us, to our families, to our friends, to people of color, to anybody. It's not acceptable, and that we need to stand up for that. And so by being that role model and doing that at a young age and bringing them in, I think is instrumental to that long-term impact. And when you look at the pipeline for jobs and, you know, how women and people of color, it drops off when you get to that VP level as you go up the ladder. But in order to increase this number, we have to start educating, giving access, addressing some of these issues here, because it's going to take, you know, 10, 15 years. It's not something overnight that's going to be solved. So if we focus on this, hopefully we'll be able to impact this future vision.
Absolutely. I think that's fantastic. I love that mission again. So Tracy, not only as an entrepreneur, but as an entrepreneur working in the sports entertainment industry, you are definitely succeeding in a historically male-dominated environment. Can you tell me, in your opinion, why you think female entrepreneurship is crucial to startup innovation across all industries?
Yeah, let me just first, it's a great question. And, you know, listening to what Alicia is saying, we've always worked in a male-dominated industry. You know, it's whether you're in fashion, whether you're in sports, whether you're in retail. You know, when I couldn't make money as an athlete and had to make that choice, I got into retail. I worked for Arthur Blank and Home Depot. It was me and 5 guys went around and opened hundreds and built hundreds of Home Depot stores. When I went, you know, and evolved my career, I went a couple years into the agency world. It was me and the dudes. It's always been me and the dudes. And you know what? It's benefited me in so many ways, because I don't see it as, you know, something that's going to keep me down. I see it as an opportunity to educate and to bring great things to the table. And so we bring so many things as women that are just natural to our beings, you know, which I mentioned earlier. We're more empathetic. It's not because I feel that, it's because, you know, human studies over time have shown that. You know, how do we leverage that? How do we be proud of it? How do we write our story into moving forward in the future? And, you know, when I look at just purely the business that we're helping, which is helping keep every athlete who's made a career out of their craft, which is what we are trying to do. I want women to take the seat they deserve. I want women athletes to take the seat they deserve. And it's just, you know, it's important because you can do what's familiar, you can do what's comfortable, you can do what's expected, or you can get out there and do what's right. And, you know, doing what's right has changed over time, because it wasn't, I just wasn't looking to change it. I was looking to be a part of it, but it became very important after, you know, 15, 18 years of being the only female, you know, on the executive team, the only female on the board, the only female, you know, sitting in these positions. I was like, okay, why aren't other females, you know, up here with me? This cannot be the case. We have to own who we are, own our story, be proud of it, put ourselves out there. And so it has become much more important, mostly for people like Alicia and Cecilia and the kids, so that the young girls don't have to play on the boys baseball team like I did, don't have to play in the little league, you know, boys t-ball team like I did, don't have to, you know, they can sit at the table and they can say, wow, look at what I bring to the table. Own it, own your story, be proud of it, because we need the world to be diverse, to have diverse mindsets. It takes all of us, and it's become super important. So I am 100% proud. I oftentimes spit it out there, even when I think, okay, this is an awkward time to spit it out there. But I'm like, we are a woman-powered company, 2 co-founders, 2 females. Doesn't mean that's all we do is all women, although that'd be super cool. But we want to put the best people at the table, and our belief is we need to open a door, crack a window, and make sure we give women the opportunity to be at that table. So I know that was a lot to digest, but as you can tell, it mixes my passion and my purpose. So yeah, thanks for asking it.
Absolutely. So Cecilia, let me ask you, so you are the CEO of Exeboard, obviously, and you said that you work at a small incubator, right? So you work there with entrepreneurs, investors, engineers, creating scalable companies. Can you tell me, I know you're very focused on impact, so can you tell me throughout your career, looking forward, what is some impact that you want to have during your career?
Oh, that's a great question. We have a lot of great ideas. I have a lot of great ideas, things I've been stirring up in my mind. And I think that I want to make at least one of them come true, and like a different project in the future. But most importantly, I mean, in living in Guatemala, where it's more so than in other countries, the privilege I have is quite evident. And so I think like creating a project that really helps us transform communities and really is a positive impact economically on those communities, I think would be amazing. I have yet to kind of take the plunge and really find the project that I can kind of pour my energy into in the future. Right now, obviously, I love the company we're building, but it is a company that ultimately will mostly benefit, board members and then, ourselves and our workers, but it's potentially a small impact. Whereas creating a community-driven project that is sustainable, that helps kind of revitalize communities, I think would be fantastic. Like I said, I'm not quite sure exactly which project. We have a couple of ideas there around kind of creating spaces and community-driven spaces in areas that have been abandoned, and figuring out partnerships that can really sustain them. And that's like a little idea we've been stirring up. We were actually working on the presentation just yesterday. But yeah, I think I'd love to leave a better and more equitable country to my kids and my grandkids, etc. So something along those lines, but not quite sure how we're going to get there yet.
Well, I have no doubt that you will get there. I love how passion-driven each of you are. So to kind of come full circle, we talked about the past, your kind of journeys to where we are now. We talked about the current state of all of your businesses, and we talked about what you hope to accomplish in the future. So I want to end on this question for each of you, and it's, what piece of advice, if you could just pick one piece of advice, would you give your younger self at the start of your career? Or would you like to give all of the aspiring entrepreneurs that are watching this?
Ooh, I can jump in. I would say to not be afraid to try things, because if you look at my career, it's not a straight line, right? I was in college. I started doing web development. I moved to California. I did that on the side. I worked 6 jobs there because I was broke out of school and also wanted to use a job to go to concerts or do things that I loved, right? And then I moved to Chicago. I didn't know anybody, but I had a ton of debt from California and I was ready to focus on my career, but I felt like the city had opportunity. I could come here and I could really, move forward. And I tried PR. I worked at agencies. I worked, in a lot of different areas. Some I loved, some I knew were not for me. But with that, I've learned so many different things. And so I felt like back in the day, especially so I started in digital media, and that was, right when the internet was starting and all of that. And if we switched jobs, my mom would be so concerned about career changing and, that kind of thing. But it's different now. And so whereas you don't have to have this decision made when you graduate college and stick with it forever, it's like you're going to get to know who you are. And other things are going to impact your life, whether it's life-changing events or just things you find out about yourself, just to allow yourself to grow, give yourself, the grace if you don't like something and you need to change it. but becoming self-aware enough to recognize that, and then to take those chances and reach out to people that you don't think will call you back, and follow up with them, because when you're busy, you love a good follow-up. At least I do.
Cecilia, Tracy, any thoughts?
Yeah, I have two. I'd say don't be so hard on yourself. I think kind of, I don't remember if it was Tracy or Alicia, someone said I'm a recovering perfectionist. I think that not being so hard on yourself and realizing that there's things you can't control and then things you're great at, and just kind of having that confidence and not doubting yourself, I think is key. And then I think the other one I would say is surround yourself with people that can make you great, and that appreciate you for who you are, and that really empower you. So be it mentors, friends, colleagues, etc. Just surround yourself with the right people, and then that'll immediately make you a better person, increase your chances of success, and just allow the best version of yourself.
That's fantastic. Tracy, any thoughts?
Yeah, I love what Cecilia and Alicia both said. Couldn't agree more. I think, as I think about, making space for like what matters when you're moving forward, I think it wraps around knowing your story and feeling good about your story. So the power of story does a lot, having spent my career in essentially, part art, part science of consumer marketing and consumer, behaviors and brand building. When you know your story, whether it's you as an entrepreneur, it's your message that you're delivering to a market you want to appeal to, it's your website, it's your 10-second pitch, it's your 2-minute pitch. When you know your story, that power will deliver you people and relationships that relate to your story. And I think owning that story in, what both of my peers here have said, which is you don't need to apologize for your story. You don't need to fear your story to keep you from doing it. But when you're really crystal, there's an old framework, still pretty relevant, which is like, when you know your story, everybody else will know it too. And when you don't know your story or you don't own your story, as an entrepreneur, you waste time, you're like the goat in the paper mill. You're like going around and nobody's like telling you like I resonate. And so don't hesitate. We as people relate to stories. The best thing in life as an entrepreneur is if somebody doesn't relate to your story, you know where you shouldn't spend time, whether it's the customer you're attracting, the investors you're trying to reach. And I think people spend too much time fearing that their story doesn't relate or doesn't resonate. And so they try to mold their story. Just own it. The best thing you can do. Know it, own it, feel good about it. When a pandemic hits, your story might shift how you do it, but why you're doing it probably doesn't shift. And so that's what I'll leave the audience with is own it, know it, communicate it, deliver it. And, if 200 people out of 201 don't relate to your story, you know where not to spend time.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of that advice. I think that, it's all great advice, and I will definitely take it to heart, and I'm fairly sure everyone else watching will as well. So yeah, thank you so much for your time today. It's been very insightful and I think very impactful. So again, thank you.
Thank
you
you
for having us.
Appreciate it.